Arizona basketball and a look around the national scene. Who should you know? Who shouldn't you know? All of that and more on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now we're going to go around the national scene, say who you should keep an eye on, who you shouldn't. First and foremost, we're going to start with Arizona. Arizona is an interesting situation here because Arizona is a team that has Arizona has a really, really good chance of coming out of their region just based off the betting odds alone. And I think that's what's fascinating about all of this. By the way, magic trick right there is just what's coming. Arizona is the betting favorite to come out of the West. It is the only number 2 seed out there that is that. And there's a variety of reasons why. Listen, all the other ones are fairly heavy favorites. Purdue, and we're going to get to all those, but Purdue, Houston, and UConn, all heavy favorites. Arizona, though, is favored over North Carolina. And you might say, Mike Luke, why is this the case? Well, thanks for asking. First, I think the big part of it is that the starting lineups between Arizona and North Carolina are fairly even. And, actually, they're almost identical in a weird way. Armando Bacot and Umar Ballo, leader of men, are essentially the same player. They're, Armando Bacot is maybe a little bit, maybe a tad better, but it's not much. It's negligible at best. And then you got Harrison Ingram and Keyshawn Johnson. Harrison Ingram is better than Keyshawn Johnson, but Harrison Ingram is also not the player that's going to go for 45 points in a game or 30 points or whatever. He's going to do his 17 and maybe 9 and a couple assists. That's what Harrison Ingram is going to do. And then, whereas Keyshawn Johnson, though, is a pretty good physical matchup for him because they're, like I said, he's probably a little bit better athlete, a little bit stronger, and he's been there before. Nobody's going to push Keyshawn Johnson around. So, again, Harrison Ingram, probably a little bit better, but it's negligible. Then you get to the small forward spot. Cormac Ryan and Pelle Larsson. Cormac Ryan, every Arizona fan knows who Cormac Ryan is because he was at Stanford. He's been on 9 teams now. Cormac Ryan is a really, really good 3-point shooter. But other than that, he doesn't do a ton. Whereas Pelle Larsson does a little bit of everything. Pelle Larsson is very, very good. That to me is, again, Pelle Larsson is a little bit better, and that's not really, I don't think that I'm really breaking any news to anybody there. Pelle Larsson is just a little bit better. And then at the shooting guard spot, that's one of the most interesting ones that we got going. That, let's be honest, RJ Davis and Caleb Love. I get it. RJ Davis was a first-team All-American. Totally understand it get it. Caleb Love was a third-team All-American. You look at their numbers, and they're pretty close to being identical. And not only are they pretty close to being identical, they're also kind of their impact is kind of the same. And honestly, I'm totally okay with that. I think with both these teams or both these players, their team's going to ride or die with them. Again, I'll give that RJ Davis is a little bit better. But one thing about it, RJ Davis is also a 6-foot shooting guard. Those guys are generally a little bit easier to cover come NCAA tournament time because they start going against better teams and they don't have quite the margin for error that some of their counterparts do. So that's something to certainly keep in mind. Then at the point guard spot, there's no doubt about it. Godot's better than Kylan Boswell. Kylan Boswell is playing very bad basketball right now. And not only is he playing very poor basketball, he just looks like he just looks shook. I'm at the stage with Kylan Boswell where I'm going to keep starting him, obviously. But I will say that I think that we are also at the point where there's got to be a quick hook. There can't be any more, Mr. Nice Guy. We're looking to make sure that everything works for Kylan. There can't be any of that. You got to get him out of there if he's not playing well. And again, I hate saying it. I hate being that blunt, but it's really that simple. You got to get him out of there if he's not playing well. And that's just the way it is. Again, this is we aren't playing for participation awards at this time. We are playing for an NCAA tournament bid or NCAA tournament advancement. And on top of that, Arizona's advantage in this game, and one of the reasons that I think that they're favored over North Carolina is the bench. Arizona's got difference makers coming on and off the bench. With Jaden Bradley. Jaden Bradley is a difference maker. He can come into the game. Defensively, he can turn it up. And not only can he turn it up defensively, he can also score. I think there's this misconception that Jaden Bradley can't score the basketball. Well, Jaden Bradley can score the basketball. He's just not going to do it from a shooting perspective. Okay, I mean, it is what it is. And then with KJ Lewis. How many teams can bring in a 6'4", 6'5", probably future lottery pick off the bench? Most of these, and honestly, between him and Jaden Bradley, these guys would start for 95% of the teams in the country, maybe more. And most guys, and it shows kind of their selflessness, would probably not be okay with coming off the bench, especially in a Jaden Bradley situation where he's clearly better than the starting point guard. But he's obviously sacrificed, and I think that is a very, very nice little sign, and it is definitely a good sign of the culture that is in place that he's okay. He's okay coming off the bench. And then, like I said, KJ Lewis, if RJ Davis gets going and you need to be able to really throw some length and some athleticism at him, that's where you bring in KJ Lewis. And that's where I think it becomes very interesting for Arizona and for North Carolina, because it's hard to really recreate somebody like KJ Lewis. And I've been saying this from the beginning, and I'm going to continue to say this. I will continue to say this, that with Mount Crevis, listen, I know that he's been far from ideal at times. Totally get all of that. But Mount Crevis there's going to be a time when Mount Crevis is going to be counted on for some big buckets. I think back to the national championship run with Donnell Harris, where Donnell Harris was needed in the national championship game, especially in overtime with A.J. Bramlett in foul trouble, to come in, get some rebounds, play really good basketball, and he was able to do just that. I think Crevis, again, it's not going to be an every game thing, because if it's an every game thing, then Arizona's probably in a little bit of trouble. But it's also going to be something where I think that his impact will be felt. I'm also excited to see what he can do, because I think he's going to acquit himself well. But there are a couple things that I need from Mount Crevis. I cannot have Mount Crevis dribble the basketball. No dribbling the basketball. None of that. Because the second that it's you dribble it, the second you brace yourself, the ball is gone. We do not want that. Under no circumstances do we want that. So again, I can't have Crevis dribbling the basketball. Then the other thing too, and it's kind of like the rule with Pelle Larsson. Pelle Larsson, you get two dribbles. You get no more dribbles than that. Otherwise, the ball is generally taken away from you. That's where I'm at with both of those players. But now we're going to talk about one last thing on Arizona that you're definitely going to want to know. But first, Bettor Together. All right. Download Bettor Together from the App Store. Here's the deal. Use promo code LOCKEDON for a free $5 entry into any NCAA basketball contest. Bettor Together is fantastic. This is something where you get in there, you do this with your buddies, and you can get some for a free $5 entry into any. You can make some little bit of money in your spare time. You think that you're looking around college basketball and you're like, I think I know more than some of these people. That's where Bettor Together comes in. So again, download Bettor Together from the App Store. Use promo code LOCKEDON for a free $5 entry into any NCAA basketball contest. Again, very fun stuff. You will thank me later. And if you're watching the games and you're involved in Bettor Together, No better place to do it than Amazon Fire TV, my friends. All right, visit your sports destination. To learn more, visit amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, streaming is the wave of the future. We all know that. Everybody knows that. Heck, even Michael Crow, president in ASU, knows that. He just doesn't know what it means. But either way, Fire TV, check it out. Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. This is one of those spots where this is one of those places where you can basically watch everything. And with cable kind of starting to be phased out, Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV is going to be your new destination for everything you want to do. So again, check it out. Again, streaming, as we all know, is the wave of the future. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now. Let's talk a little bit more of Arizona, North Carolina. So that's really the reason. I think that the starters are fairly negligible. Maybe North Carolina has a wee bit of an advantage, but I don't think that counteracts the fact that Arizona has a better bench, and that Arizona is going to be playing in front of the home court contingent. As we all know, Arizona fans are the best fans in the world. They travel. It is fun to watch. Arizona, I think, is going to cover this one. In Arizona, like I said, I'm just explaining the reason why that Arizona is considered the favorite in in that region, and I think you're going to continue to see that. Now, let's move around the country a little bit. Now, I'm going to take my Arizona homer hat off here and just talk a little bit about where I kind of see everything shaking out. And the first one that I'm interested in is Arizona UConn. Listen, if you remove bias, UConn is clearly, outside of Arizona, UConn is clearly the best team in the country. They have all the pieces. And UConn is the one team that it's impossible to see them ever getting destroyed by really anybody. Granted, I know they've lost a game, but by 18 to Creighton. But UConn is really, really good. And not only is UConn really, really good, they just they check off all of the boxes. That they've got the big man up front in Klingon. You've got that dynamic wing in Castle, who they won even without. You've got great guard play. You've got players that are averaging almost triple doubles. You've got a super good, tough coach in Danny Hurley. It's just overall a very good team, and it's constructed perfectly. And Hurley again. I mean, Hurley's got this thing going. This is probably the best team as far as with the best chance of repeating since, I would say, Florida. Now, again, it's very, very difficult to repeat. We all know that. But you watch Hurley's team, you know exactly what they're about, what they're going to do. And not only do you know all of that, you know that he's just in this one for the long haul. I always joke about it, but you watch him on the sideline and he's fiery. He can be a maniac at times, but he at least has a method to his madness, whereas Bobby Hurley always kind of looks like he has lost control of things, doesn't really know what he's doing. By the way, Bobby Hurley getting a contract extension. Very, very interesting. Very funny. But we will talk about that on another show at some point. But Danny Hurley just gets it in ways that his brother never really got it. And again, he shows that you can be hostile, you can be menacing without being a terror, and that's exactly what he has shown that he can do. So either way, this team is really, really good, and not only is this team really, really good, they're a squad that I think probably should win it all. And there's a reason that they are the betting favorite on FanDuel. So. And I don't really care who's in front of them. I think they're ready for this moment. Then after that, you got Purdue. All right, here's the deal with Purdue. They've got a fairly easy path, but I'm still going to pick Purdue. Purdue will get to the Sweet 16 max because, again, you got Zach Edey. He's obviously really, really, really good. But after Zach Edey, you're a little bit better than last year, but you still got some pretty limited players that are not going to strike fear into really anyone. And That's kind of been the way that it's been for Purdue under Matt Painter. And they're just I think they're just kind of one-dimensional. If they come across an athletic team, they can be in a lot of trouble. And not only can they be in a lot of trouble, I think they will be in a lot of trouble because you just can't recreate it. When you've got a bunch of players, your Braden Smiths and your Fletcher Lawyers and stuff, they can do good things. Arizona's seen it. But when the shot isn't falling, when they've got to kind of do their own thing, that's when they're kind of a fish out of water, and that's where it becomes problematic for them. And I think that's going to be the case. So again, we will certainly see how that one plays out. Now with Purdue. Again, I'm going Sweet 16 to max for them. I do not see it. I didn't see it last year. I don't see it this year as well. And then obviously Houston. Listen, Houston is as tough as they come. It's one of the best defensive teams I've ever seen in college basketball. I don't care if the metrics show that. I'm just saying from a toughness, from a physicality perspective, this is a very, very good team. It's obviously led by Jabal Shed. And then but offensively, they got issues. I mean, there's times when they can't score. They can't put the ball in the basket. And Shed is very, very good. But Shed's also not somebody that's going to make a stake in Arizona fan for Jason Terry that can drop 35 points on you. He's always going to be kind of in that 10 to 16 range. He's tough as nails. All of that, totally get that. But he's also not the guy who is he's also not the guy that is just going to be is going to light the world on fire offensively. Now, LJ Cryer is certainly somebody that I think is more in that realm. But the problem, LJ Cryer is still more of a standstill three-point shooter. Again, that's not all he can do. He can certainly get to the bucket. I get all of that. And not only can he get to the bucket, he can also he can get the pull up, but again, still kind of one-dimensional to a certain degree. I don't really worry about him. And if you lose a game because he's destroyed you, then that's just on you. You're probably going to lose that game anyway. So again, they're very, very good, but I think they're also susceptible to going out early because they can't score. That's the problem. And I think that's going to continue to be the problem for Houston. Out of all the number one seeds, UConn to me is clearly the safest bet for the reasons that we laid out, and we'll continue to see if that continues to be the case. But I envision that continuing to be the case. Now, dark horses, some teams that and again, it feels weird to call Duke a dark horse, and they are a 4 seed. I get it, but Duke I think Duke's going to be tough. Duke is really, I think Duke's come on, and Duke just kind of checks off a lot of boxes in that you've got you're not relying on just freshmen, and Filipowski down low is obviously very good. You got McLean, you got guys like that. And you've got some fourth year guys. I like Duke. I actually think Duke is going to come out of that. Now, again, you might say, Mike, they're not a dark horse. You're probably right. They're not a dark horse. But either way, Duke, I think, is very, very good. And Duke is definitely going to be a team to keep a very, very close eye on. I like them. Kentucky's another one. Again, Kentucky, not a dark horse, a 3 seed. But I've generally been not bullish on Calipari's teams of late. This team I'm a little bit more bullish on because they've got a variety of guys that can score. And they're also not relying on top flight type scores. They're not relying on their Severe Wheelers of the world, your Keon Brooks. These are players that are going to be top 3, top 4 picks. I like this team, and I think they're going to be they're a little more talented than I think a lot of people give them credit for. And then Tennessee. I do not like Tennessee. I think Tennessee is going to go out early for a variety of reasons. First, Rick Barnes, not a fan of Rick Barnes come NCAA tournament time, never been. And Dalton Knecht is absolutely great. If Zach Edey wasn't the National Player of the Year, Dalton Knecht would be that National Player of the Year. But they're really relying on him. When Ziegler is your second best player, that can be kind of a problem in my opinion. And that's why I am not a huge fan of Tennessee. But we're going to talk about something with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. But first, Nissan. All right, I got a Nissan, as we've been talking about. I got a Nissan Altima about a month and a half ago, and I love this car. It's sleek, it slides through the streets, and it looks good. You know, a lot of people said, Nissan, why would you get a Nissan? Why wouldn't I get a Nissan? It was very cost effective. It's for driving reasons. Obviously, gas mileage is fantastic. Check it out, Nissan, my friends. You will thank me later. Again, I love it. I loved my previous car, but I like this Nissan even more. Plus, it's not a target to be stolen. So again, check it out, NissanUSA.com. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk the Pac-12. I think I got Arizona advancing into that second weekend, obviously. I also have Oregon advancing. I think Oregon is playing good basketball right now. I think they are going to beat South Carolina. And I also think that they are going to beat Creighton. Big reason why is N'Faly Dante is awesome. N'Faly Dante is probably one of the top 5 big men in the country, and he is healthy. The problem with them is that you don't really know what Jermaine Couisnard is going to get, but Jermaine Couisnard is a good basketball player. Jackson Shellstad's picked it up as well. This is a good team. And, you know, a lot of times with Altman teams, if they start gelling at the end, they're the last team that you really want to face. I think that they're going to make a run. I can see them getting all the way to the Elite Eight. It would not surprise me at all. And the Big Ten, again, we will continue to mock and ridicule the Big Ten. Now, I think some people are starting to get onto the Big Ten, that they're not that good. Good, because they're not. And I think with the Big Ten, kind of the cat is out of the bag, that you put in 13 teams and none of them make them past the first weekend. That if it happens enough, a lot of people, I think, start to figure that one out. Big Ten, not good. Not a fan of the Big Ten. And I think that this is going to be more of the same. You got 6 teams in. I think you maybe get 1 into the second weekend. Not a fan of the Big Ten, and their track record proves it. Now, a conference that I am a big fan of, the Big 12. Very, very big fan of the Big 12. And not only am I a big fan of the Big 12, I think this is also the conference that is not overrated. This is also a conference that is not overrated. Listen, 2 of the last 3 national champions came from there. And I think you could make the case that if Bill Self had Bill Self not been out last year, I think you could have made a case that they would have done it again. But listen, you've got Houston. We talked about Houston a lot. Kansas was really, really good until they just started dealing with injuries left and right to frontline players. McCullough and Hunter Dickinson, those are issues when you're dealing with injuries like that. And then, so again, that's a little bit of an issue. But teams like TCU is super athletic. I could absolutely see them knocking off a 1 seed in the second round. As a matter of fact, I might even pick them to knock off a 1 seed in the second round. And then Iowa State, obviously a 2 seed. I think you could make the case that they were a 1 seed, but that's a interesting one to keep an eye on. But overall, I look for the Big 12 to acquit itself very, very well, even if they don't have the national champion. But bigger fish, the NCAA tournament is here, my friends. It is here, and not only is it here, I think we're at the point now where it's go time. And with Arizona, North Carolina, laid out the reasons that I think Arizona is the favorite over North Carolina. And I guess we'll see if that one of those play out. Again, not guaranteeing anything, but it's always a good sign. You'd like to have Vegas on your side and not against you. And then I think UConn is the best team in the tournament. And we went through some of the dark horses. Now, on Thursday, we're going to be coming out with obviously a post-game show breaking down Arizona Long Beach State and everything you need to know from that. But I expect Arizona to roll in that game. And if they don't roll in that game, then we got some issues. But as always, thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen. You've been listening to Locked On Wildcats.